For today is the Flow API in Kotlin. So the agenda of this presentation is to cover up the introduction part first, then we'll move to its needs, and after that we are going to discuss about the entities that are involved in the streaming of data, and then we are going to start integrating the Flow API in our demo project, right? And after that we are going to discuss about some operators in the flow and some builders in the flow, right? So let's proceed with the introduction part first. So as we are saying this, the Flow API. So what is the Flow API? So it is the better way to handle the stream of data. The data that can be done asynchronously and that executed sequentially, right? So in a very basic terms, if I say a flow is a coroutine that can emit multiple values in a sequence order, which means we are going to emit a stream of multiple values over a particular period of time, right? So flows are built on the top of coroutines, which means it can provide a full support to coroutines and can provide multiple values. So basically we specify the flow like this, the flow and int. So we have to specify the type, right? So here I specify the int, which means it will going to emit the integer values, right? So this is all about in the introduction part. Precisely, I would say inferentially, Flow API is going to emit the multiple values over a particular period of time in a sequence order, right? So let's get proceed to it needs that why we need Flow. So as I told you earlier also that it includes full support to coroutines, right? Like if we are working with the coroutines, so it provides the full support for that. Like if I'm talking about a normal suspending function or a normal function, the operational function, it will going to return a single value, right? But if we are using the flow, we can easily emit multiple values. So this is all about in this flow. And what about the coroutines? We can easily consume, build, transform a flow using coroutines, which means it can also provide the full support to the control concurrency. Control concurrency means that it provides the coordinating or the coordination to the coroutines, which will going to execute in a sequence order. So Flow can be used in a fully reactive programming framework. So let's get more into it. What is exactly the reactive programming is? Let's consider an example. Like assume I want to read a newspaper, right? So what exactly I will do? The functional approach that I'm going to follow is I'll go to the market, buy a newspaper, come back home, and then going to read it, right? So what will be the precisely the reactive way is I'll contact with the delivery man person, ask him to bring up the newspaper at my home. So what my job is, I just have to wait for it, wait for the newspaper to come, right? Then after that I'm able to read it, right? So the point is, here I'm just observing whether the newspaper will come or not, right? This is what exactly the reactive programming framework is. We just going to observe each and everything that we will get the data from. Like we are getting the data from the API, like we are getting the data from the repository. So our main motto is to observe it first, then after that we can easily consume it. So this is what is all about in this flow, that why we need flow. So there are basically three entities that are involved in streaming of data. The first one is consumer, the second one is intermediaries, and the third one is the producer. So basically it is a two-way process because the intermediary consider as the optional. So producer will going to produce the stream of data. Intermediaries means that we are going to filter the particular amount of data, like modifying the data. That is totally optional. And the last one is the consumer, which means we are going to consume the data, the particular stream of data that we produces. So this is what is all about in this. So let's get started. Start integrating the Flow API in our project. So before proceeding next, I give you an example of the producer, intermediaries, and the consumer. So what exactly we do, like consider an example, like for example, I have a repository and that contains a totally high amount of data, right? So in Android, a repository is basically a producer of the UI, right? which means it contains the data of the UI. So what exactly I'm trying to say is this: a repository consider as the producer here, and my UI components consider as the consumer here, which means they are going to consume those values and will going to uh, print that or the display that value in a particular views or the widgets. So we particularly face sometimes we particularly face the situations like where the UI layer is a producer of the user input events, and the other layers of the hierarchy consumes them. So basically, the layers between the producer and the consumers act as the intermediaries, which means we can modify a particular stream of data to adjust it according to our requirements of the following layers. So first point I have to do here is I have to add those dependency into my app build.gradle. This is exactly I'm doing here. This is my project. I'm just opening it. I have already edited these two particular dependency, and after that a pop-up will be appear on your screen. You just have to sync it and just wait for it completion, right? So the next part is, so as we all know that I'm using the traditional approach, which means I'm just going to use uh, the XML over here. Here I have a text view where I've specified the limited amount of attribute that are required to show the data, and I have a button over here that will going to help me to click on a particular click listener. So inside my main activity, I have two methods: setup flow and setup clicks. So firstly, I have to declare a late init variable of flow type int. Exactly, I have done here, right? I have specified the type over here, which means it will going to emit the values of integer types, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of a thing. Then what exactly I'm doing here, I'm initializing that flow variable, right? How? This is the flow block. Inside that, what exactly I'm doing here is, this is the for loop, which will going to generate the number from 0 to 15, right? So, and I'm going to emit the numbers or the items with 500 millisecond delay. So, uh, right? So here we have the emit function. Like, to emit the numbers, we'll have to use emit function, which means it will going to collect the values that has to be emitted, right? So it is a part of flow collector, which will be used as a receiver over here, right? Then after that, the flow on over here, which means that it shall be used to change the context of the flow emission. We can specify the different dispatchers over here, that input output dispatcher, the default one, that is totally depend upon its needs or the requirements, and to the developer also, right? Then I have emitted it. So after that, I have to collect it first, right? So exactly I'm doing here, like on this particular method. So I have specified the button. This is the particular the ID of the button, right? I have specified over here. So what exactly I'm going to do is that I'm going to click on this particular button, and a pop-up will be appear on my screen that the text value will be updated according to its uh, emitted value. So let's forget about it also, right? So what exactly I'm doing here is I'm just collecting the value, and see the type over here. It's a type of int because we are emitting the value of integer type. So let's get started, right? Told you earlier also that it follows some basic entities, right? So the three entities are, that is the consumer one, the producer one, and the intermediaries. So this particular part is the producer part, which means here we are just producing the value, right? So after that we have to collect it. So this part is the consumer part, right? We have not specified, we have not implemented the intermediary part over here, because as I told you earlier that uh, in the intermediary part we have some kind of operators that will going to filter the values, that particular values. The So I have not applied over here. So yes, I'm just collecting the value, and it's a type of int, and showing that value into my text view. So let me run my program and show you how it works. In the meantime, if you have any other queries regarding this, you can ask me. So this is my particular screen, right? So I'm just going to set the click listener on this button, and it will going to emit my value, right? It goes well, right? Have with 500 millisecond delay. So this is what exactly I want to display you all, right? Any other builders in Flow. The first one is flow of. So it is used to create a flow from the given set of values, which means a given set will be given to us. We are just going to emit those values. So in this, we don't have the emit method. We just have uh, we just have to uh, write it down, and it will going to emit it by itself, right? Let me show you with the help of an example. So this is my method, that is a flow of. I specified the uh, number of data set, that 1 2 3 4 5 6, and each item will be emitted with the 100 millisecond delay, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment it and call this method, right? Then I'm going to run this. So the output should be 1 2 3 4 5 6. Exactly, this is what happening. So the another method, that is the as flow, works as the same. I have specified the data set over here, that is 1 to 9, and it will going to emit those values with the 100 millisecond delay. And what exactly I'm doing here is I'm just collecting those value and printing those value into my text view. Uh, right? So these are the very basic things. So let me explain you with the help of the API, that how can we do that with retrofit, right? So this is my project structure. I think this is pretty much clear to everyone. These are my packages. This is my API package. Here I have specified my base URL, and this is the object of my retrofit. And what exactly I'm doing here is uh, I'm just going to uh, call this method from the main activity and get the response, right? So I'm using the jet compose over here, which means it's not a traditional mode. So now I'm not going to use any XML over here. So this is my jet compose, which means uh, no screen will be visible over here. So this is my repository. So I'm just going to call the method, and it will going to return me the response from the server, right? Let me show you the final output of it, then I will explain you the code. Just wait for a second. So this is the final output of this project, right? I'm fetching the data from the API, that is the image and the text, and showing that data into the lazy column. So uh, I'm actually following the architecture of MVI, that is model view intent. So this is a very basic thing, I think we all must be aware of. And so what exactly I'm doing here is I'm getting the response from the server and initializing that data into the get user method, right? So here I'm just following the same concept as I told you, that is the flow API. So here I just mentioned the state, that is a mutable state flow. It works through the state that if it changes, that it will going to show me on my screens, right? So this is the same flow block. This is my state that I initializes over here, right? And I initialize it, the initial value with the loading one, right? That the data, अगर जैसा मेरा data मेरी screen पे show होगा, that a loader will be appear on my screen, right? So this exactly what I'm doing here. मैं firstly मैंने value डाली है loading की, then after that अगर मुझे correct response आता है from the server, then I'm just posting that value into the my state variable. It's a basically ये state का type इसका mutable state है, and मैं दिखा देता हूँ, right? The loading one, the user and the error. अगर कोई error आता है, then it will going to enter into this particular class. So and after that I'm just emitting that value, and I have specified the dispatcher input output, which means uh, we are dealing with the API, right? So we are dealing with the input output operations, so I have specified that over here. Then after that we have to collect those values. Yes sir, please. This is the particularly producer part, and this is the consumer part, right? I'm just going to consume those values and going to put that value into my views, right? So I have just collected those data that has to be, that already has been emitted. So then after that I'm going to show that data into my components, that is view components. So this is my function, and मैंने फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल क्या किया, दैट इज सबसे पहले इसकी कलेक्ट मतलब स्टेट जो है उसकी कलेक्ट की, देन उसको मैंने इनिशियलाइज कर दिया माई स्टेट में. सो वट एग्जैक्टली आई एम डूइंग हियर इज आई एम जस्ट फिगरिंग आउट दैट व्हाट काइंड ऑफ स्टेट उसकी मतलब उस पर्टिकुलर वेरिएबल की है, राइट? सो I specified the when case over here, which means a certain or the multiple conditions has been specified here. If it is in the loading state, a progress bar will be appear on my screen. So this is the progress bar, and this is this is particularly the design one. This is a circular progress bar. I'm going to show if my data is in the loading state, right? And after that we have the user one, which means if I get the response successfully, I can easily show that data into my views, right? Into my widgets. So I have specified the lazy column over here, and sending that data into my particular method and showing that data over here. So I have used the coil image library to show the data, and here is the text. So and the third one is the error one. If I get any kind of error, so I'm just toasting that data into the screen. So the final output will be like this. See the loading state over here, and after that when I get the response successfully, I'm just showing the data into my views. This is what exactly how it works, and how the flow API emitting the multiple values over a particular span of time, and how we are going to collect it. I missed out a particular topic, the filter one. So like uh, as I told you that I'm just emitting the value from 0 to 15, right? So there is a part where I can easily filter those values, right? For example, I have basically two basic operators that comes into the intermediaries part, the map one and the flow one, and the filter one. So what exactly I'm doing here is uh, I have added the map operator, which will take each item and will going to square itself, and then will going to print that value. So it comes under the intermediaries. It is totally optional, totally depend upon the needs, uh, or the totally depend upon the requirement. Okay, see it, you know, squaring the value by itself, right? Then we'll have the another one that is called the filter one. So in this, what exactly I'm doing here, the number that is divisible by 3 will going to be retained in this particular variable, right? Which means I'm just going to print those variable that is divided by 3. Let me run again. This is what exactly is happening. Thank you so much, everyone.